want to take some time today to just highlight what we're doing with the SCX platform. Of course, we spent so much of our time doing the CMAX development and perfecting the stuff on the skeleton and getting mount kits made up for all these different new hard bodies that are out, and so we want to go back to the basics. And today I'm going to spend some time highlighting our new scale transmission mount combo that goes into any SCX10. Have a look. In order to do the assembly, what we did is take an SCX2 RTR truck that had the 3-gear transmission in it. We took out the servo mount and the battery tray and the little bracket here, and we've got the transmission out, of course. And then what we did is reused all of the standard link componentry. We reused the drive shafts. We left the factory skid plate in the truck. And so all we've really done is clear out the brackets that were in the front of the vehicle, and we've replaced the brackets in the front of the vehicle with the scale drivetrain and the already available GCM dual servo mount for the SCX, and then we have a brand new 3D printed front bumper mount should you decide you want to reuse the original RTR Jeep setup with the post-mounted bumper. Of course, in the rear of the truck, nothing's changed. So in the front here, we have a new bumper mount available. The current dual servo mount for the SCX that's in the GCM stores. We use the stock servo again. There's a new steering arm that will replace the original steering arm because we've moved the servo from the side over to the center. So just by moving the servo slightly, we had to change the length of the steering arm slightly. And to show you that the steering geometry is still perfect, you can see here that there's no bump steer in the truck. So it works fantastic. We have adequate drivetrain clearance. If you look down inside here, you can see the drive shaft angle that's going from the overdrive LRT2 transfer case over to the front axle here, and the drive shaft angle clears under all the suspension movement, so there's no issues with having stuff get tangled up. We're using the original drive shaft, so no issues there. And then the only other thing you really need to know is that we're reusing these 2 bolts. So there used to be 4 bolts in the transmission that held the axial 3-gear tranny on, and we're using these 2 middle holes again to attach to the bracket. So the rear tranny bracket actually looks like this. This one's black, but you can see how that would fit in there. Basically, the transmission bracket fits on the end of the tranny housing before you put the overdrive T-case onto it. So during assembly for the LRT2 tranny combo kit, during assembly, you are going to put in this mount bracket for the SCX mounting before you install the case over top of it. So that's how the assembly looks. And the way that the bracket is set up, you could use it with the right drop or with the left drop married transfer case setup, and all will be fine. Now, the front of the transmission, of course, in the LRT2 tranny combo, has the motor plate on it. The motor plate sits on the transmission like so, and you're going to install your electric motor there, and then the other LRT gearing that fits inside. So the way that the bracket fits onto the SCX rail is with this little mounted clip here. So you can see the case is normal on this side. I haven't added the bracket yet on this side, but I did bolt it on this side, and you can see there's a slot in the bracket right here, and the slot actually clips into the SCX frame. So you can see here on the side of the frame rail right there that the bracket actually clips underneath the rail into the channel, and then it sits sort of on top of the rail as well. And that little slot that you see in the bracket is what sits over the frame. You can see that there now. So that's how this mounts up. And the reason we don't need any hardware on these side brackets at all is because once the plate is in the truck, and then you add the two brackets, one on each side, then the entire tranny combo is actually locked into the frame rail there. So there's really no way for it to move side to side, and there's no way for it to move forward and aft because of this rear mount on the skid. So that gives you actually a bunch of neat setup options. For some guys that actually have had to move the skid ahead for shorter wheelbase SCX, the transmission position will also follow the skid plate. So there's enough arc in this bracket here on the side that you can shift your, if you have to, you can shift your skid plate forward a bit to make a shorter wheelbase truck, and these brackets will simply just slide up the rail a little bit so you can still continue to use it. But in the factory configuration like this, the regular SCX mounting, everything will easily still fit as well. So in the front, because we've used the old school GCM dual servo mount, you now have an option to put in a servo winch as well. Whether you're using this the new bumper adapter for the SCX10-2 RTR for the post, you can use that from the Shapeways store, or you can use your own bolt-on bumpers. You can use an original SCX1 servo mount, although I do prefer the steering geometry on the dual servo mount because it keeps the servo back a bit. The single servo mount tends to bring the servo forward a little bit from this, which would give you acceptable but less ideal steering geometry. So I'm using the dual servo mount here just in order to make sure that everything stays in line as it was when Axial built the RTR originally. So we've kept the SCX2 shock towers. Of course, SCX1 will also work just fine. This will not allow you to use a servo on axle. There is not enough room above the axle with the scale motor to keep a servo in there without making contact. But there is lots of room for the steering servo and the original shock towers. And in our case, because we're using an SCX2 RTR, the original track bar mount is still there, and so none of the front suspension geometry has actually changed at all. We simply moved the battery tray and servo mount over here, and now what we're going to be able to do is fit, of course, full interiors. You can see that even this exclusive RC 6-cylinder Jeep motor that we're using, it's just very slightly above the original position of the SCX2 shock tower, and we have lots and lots of room for interior. This setup actually is kind of ideal for us because we're going to be using the Jeep hard body on this vehicle, and so because we have the hood cut out, just to give you an idea of what this is going to look like, you can see here that this is how the truck will be set up. And so we have just heaps of room in the front here. We can still put the dual servo, we can put the winch mount, the servo winch in here. It's very easy to get the hood on. There's lots and lots of clearance for everything to fit. The motor is still well underneath the hood, and of course the wheelbase is a perfect match because the body was designed to fit that, and now we have all this room inside for the interior. So that's how the SCX2 looks with the scale drivetrain conversion. And now, of course, we have the added benefit of having overdrive on the front axle for the SCX2, which I think is probably a first for a bolt-on. And so we're going to be able to use the low-range transmission with these super low-range axles and then have an extra 11% overdrive, and that should give us pretty epic driving performance. So that's how the kit works. There's multiple levels of this. We're going to sell combos that have the servo mounts as well, but the 3 brackets that fit onto the LRT2 tranny combo, they will be the standard fare. So you will get the left and right for the frame and the rear tranny mount bracket, and then the assembly will look like this. when you're done with the rear bracket and the 2 front brackets on the LRT2 low-range tranny combo. And that setup will bolt right into any SCX chassis that you already currently have, or a new SCX2, just the same. So looking forward to seeing all your builds with the proper scale transmission in it. And with this low gearing here, we're going to finish up the way that this truck is set up. We're going to move the little battery over here in a little side tray, and then we'll put the electronics back into the truck and wire it up and get on the trail. Thanks for watching, and hope you're enjoying your scale transmission combo from GCM Racing.